Speaking of crazy, the First Minister of Scotland has said that his country needs to open its doors to Palestinian refugees. Let me read this tweet for you from Humza Yusuf. He said, in the past, people in Scotland and across the UK have opened our hearts and our homes. Scotland is ready to play her part to the first country in the UK to offer safety and sanctuary to the people of Gaza, to treat the injured men, women and children where we can. Now, he repeated this call in Parliament. Have a listen.
In the past, people in Scotland and across the UK have opened our hearts and our homes. We've welcomed those from Syria, from Ukraine and many other countries. Conference, we must do so again. So therefore, I'm calling today on the international community to commit to a worldwide refugee programme for the people of Gaza.
Now, it's a curious thing that he's not calling for Arab nations to take Palestinians as refugees, but rather for Scotland to take them. Or is it that curious? Back in 2020, as a government minister, he was very, very upset that Scotland was too white.
The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The Head of the Law Society, white. The Head of the Faculty of Advocates, white. Every Prison Governor, white. And not just Justice. The Chief Medical Officer, white. The Chief Nursing Officer, white.
Well, if you don't like white people, maybe you don't live in a white country. According to the 2022 diversity report in Scotland, 95.4% of the population was white. So the odds are going to be pretty good that most public officials will be white. It's a little bit like going to, say, Iran and complaining...
Oh, too many Iranian
There's no Jews in leadership. Where are all the Jews in leadership?
Going to Africa and being like, not a single white person.
Can't believe it. What's happened to this place?
Graceful. I love the venom with which he says, white! You know, the such and such a person is white, you know, and on and on. And by the end of that clip, I was like, am I hearing like white? The word has just lost all meaning for me.
So take that speech at 2020, right?
Yeah.
And now 3 years later, Scotland needs to open its arms to Palestinian refugees. Is he just being compassionate, or does he have an ideological agenda that he's running under the guise or the cloak of compassion?
He does, but you would seriously need to have custard for brains to think that it's a good idea to import refugees from Gaza right now. Because, sure, not every Palestinian is a member of Hamas, but nearly every Palestinian believes in the idea that they ought to have the land on which Israel sits, right? So to think that right now it would be a good idea to bring people from Palestine, regardless of whether or not they are members of Hamas, they have generally the same ideas. They don't have terribly liberal ideas about the people who live in Israel. They don't have terribly liberal ideas about the people who live in most of the West. To voluntarily open your arms and say, oh, we feel so sorry for you, we want you in our country. No, I'm sorry, sure. Many of them are in regrettable situations. Many of them have their lives under threat, and we sympathise with that. It's an awful situation. I understand that. But it is not the job of the West every time to put its hand up and say, well, we will be the ones to take you. Yeah. There's plenty of land around Israel. There's plenty of land around Palestine, other countries they can go to, but curiously, those countries don't want them. It's not our job to clean up other people's messes.
And I think that's a call that we're going to continue to see. The West, take them in. I mean, there he is calling upon the international community to just have a mass migration, I guess, of Gazans. And like you say, while no one wants to see anyone in that situation, it's simply not feasible.